Does your dog actually know their name, or are they just responding to the sound of your voice? Do they dream? Do they feel guilt? Do they mourn? These are not small questions. They are doorways into one of the most intimate and least understood relationships in human history. Tonight, we're going to move slowly through 100 quiet discoveries about dogs, about what they know, what they feel, what they remember, and what they are still teaching us. Some of what you hear may change how you see the animal sleeping at the foot of your bed. Other discoveries may simply drift past you like warm air through an open window, soft and pleasant and gently forgotten by morning. Either way, you are in exactly the right place. So settle in, let your breath slow, and let's begin. Dogs can recognize their own name even when they have never been trained to respond to it. From a very early age, a puppy begins to parse the sounds around it. It learns that certain sounds arrive just before something good, food, play, a gentle hand. The name becomes associated not through formal training, but through the slow accumulation of moments in which that sound preceded attention and warmth. Scientists who have studied this find that dogs do not just learn the sound of their name. They seem to understand that the sound refers specifically to them and not to another dog nearby. It is a quiet form of self-awareness, built one gentle repetition at a time. Dogs have a sense of smell that is estimated to be between 10,000 and 100,000 times more sensitive than a human's. That number is difficult to hold in the mind, but consider this. Where you might smell a cup of coffee, a dog may detect the water, the specific beans, the grounds, the temperature at which it was brewed, and traces of whoever touched the cup last. Their noses contain up to 300 million olfactory receptors. Ours contain roughly 6 million. The portion of a dog's brain devoted to analyzing scent is proportionally 40 times greater than our own. They do not experience the world primarily through their eyes the way we do. They experience it through an invisible landscape of smell, layered and shifting and full of meaning we will never perceive. Some dogs can detect certain cancers in the human body before medical equipment can. This is not a metaphor. It is a documented, replicated finding. Dogs trained for this purpose have shown the ability to identify lung cancer, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, and even certain skin cancers by detecting the distinct volatile organic compounds that cancer cells produce. In some studies, their accuracy rates have rivaled or exceeded early-stage medical screening tools. They are not doing anything supernatural. They are doing what they have always done, reading the world through scent. Only now that ability is being aimed at something we desperately need. The dog's nose, which evolved over tens of thousands of years for hunting and survival, has become one of medicine's most unexpected allies. Dogs can detect the scent of a human being for days after that person has left a room. A dog's nose is sensitive enough to follow a trail that is several days old, picking up skin cells and microscopic traces that have settled into carpet fibers and floor surfaces. Search and rescue dogs rely on exactly this capability. They are not following a visible trail. They are following something that lingers, something that is chemically encoded and fading only very slowly in the still air of a building or a stretch of open ground. When you leave the room, you leave behind a signature that your dog can read long after you have gone. Dogs yawn when humans yawn, and they yawn more readily when the yawning person is someone they know well. This is called contagious yawning, and in humans, it is thought to be connected to empathy, to a subtle emotional attunement with those around us. When researchers tested this in dogs, they found not only that dogs caught yawns from humans, but that they were significantly more likely to yawn contagiously in response to someone familiar, a family member, an owner, rather than a stranger. Whether this reflects the same neural machinery that drives human empathy is not settled, but something in the dog is responding to the emotional signal, and it responds more strongly to the people it loves. Dogs do not wag their tails randomly. The direction of the wag carries information. Studies have shown that when a dog sees something positive, like its owner, the tail tends to wag more to the right. When a dog sees something that triggers avoidance or anxiety, the wag tends to skew left. The two sides of a dog's brain, like the two sides of a human brain, control different aspects of response, with the left hemisphere typically associated with approach behavior and the right with withdrawal. And other dogs can read these directional cues. A dog that encounters another dog with a left skewing wag shows signs of stress. A right skewing wag produces a more relaxed response. There is a language happening in that tail, and it is more precise than most of us ever suspected. The domestic dog is not descended directly from the gray wolf alive today. Instead, dogs and modern wolves share a common ancestor, a now extinct wolf that lived somewhere in Eurasia, possibly tens of thousands of years ago. The exact timing and location of domestication are still debated. Some evidence suggests it happened once. Other evidence hints at multiple independent domestication events across different regions. What is clear is that the relationship between dogs and humans is extraordinarily ancient. Long before agriculture, before cities, before writing, there were dogs living alongside people, sleeping by the same fires, hunting over the same ground. We did not simply take an animal and tame it. Something more complex happened, a slow and mutual process in which both species changed. Dogs process human faces using the same region of the brain that humans use to process faces. Brain imaging studies have confirmed this. When a dog looks at a human face, activity increases in a region analogous to the fusiform face area in humans, a part of the brain specialized for recognizing and interpreting faces. Dogs are not just seeing a collection of features when they look at you. They are reading you the way you read another person, scanning for expression, for emotional content, for what your face is telling them about what is about to happen. They have been doing this for so long, across so many generations, that it has been built into the architecture of their brains. Dogs prefer to hear a calm, high-pitched voice when a human is speaking to them, and they respond differently to emotional tone than to the content of words. Researchers have found that dogs process language in a way that loosely mirrors human processing. The right hemisphere tends to handle emotional tone, and the left hemisphere tends to handle words and meaning. When a dog hears a familiar word spoken in a praising tone, both areas light up and the response is the greatest. A familiar word in a neutral tone produces some response. An unfamiliar word in a praising tone produces less. They are listening to you in two ways at once, attending both to what you are saying and to how you are saying it, and the combination is what matters most. Dogs show what researchers call left gaze bias when looking at human faces. This means that when a dog looks at a person, its eyes tend to drift slightly left, which means they are scanning the right side of the human face first. Humans also show left gaze bias when reading faces because the right side of the human face is generally more expressive and more emotionally revealing. Dogs seem to have learned, through generations of living alongside us, to read our faces the way we read each other's. They have figured out where the information is, and they go there first, automatically, without being taught. Some dogs have been shown to understand the pointing gesture in a way that very young chimpanzees and other great apes typically do not. When a human points at something, most dogs will look in the direction the finger is aimed. They understand that the gesture refers to something out there, beyond the hand, and they follow it. This is called joint attention, and it is a fairly sophisticated social skill. When researchers tested wolves raised by humans under similar conditions, the wolves did not consistently follow the pointing gesture. Something specific happened during domestication that made dogs acutely sensitive to human communicative signals. They did not just learn to live beside us, they learned to read us. Dogs experience rapid eye movement sleep, the same stage of sleep in which humans and many other mammals dream. During this phase, dogs often twitch their paws, flicker their eyelids, breathe irregularly, and sometimes produce soft sounds. Scientists believe these are the physical expressions of a dreaming mind. Research at MIT found that rats replayed their waking experiences during REM sleep, running through the same neural patterns they had traced while awake. Given how similar dog sleep architecture is to that of rats and humans, there is strong reason to believe that dogs dream about their days. They probably dream about the walk, the squirrel, the bowl being filled, the familiar voice calling them in from the yard. When you watch your dog sleeping and twitching, something real is happening in there. Dogs have a long-term memory for people. A dog that was separated from a person for 2 years and then reunited with them will often respond with a level of excitement and recognition that clearly exceeds their reaction to strangers. The scent memory of a familiar person, combined with visual and auditory cues, can persist for years. There are documented cases of dogs recognizing owners after separations of 5 or 6 years. The dog has not simply retained a habit, it has retained a person. Somewhere in the memory of that animal, you remain, not as a word or a concept, but as a rich sensory impression that time does not easily erase. Dogs can distinguish between the sound of a familiar car pulling into the driveway and the sound of other cars. Owners of dogs frequently report that their dog seems to know their car is coming before it is even visible. Researchers studying this phenomenon have found that dogs may be picking up on a combination of cues: the specific pitch of the engine, the particular pattern of deceleration, the crunch of familiar tires on familiar gravel, combined with a learned sense of timing, of when the person is usually due to return. The dog's anticipatory behavior, the pacing, the position by the door, the quiet alertness, suggests that something like expectation is operating in the animal's mind. They are not just reacting, they are predicting. Some dogs show a preference for looking at photographs of human faces over photographs of objects. This was demonstrated in eye tracking studies in which dogs were shown images on a screen while researchers recorded where their gaze landed and how long it stayed. Dogs consistently attended more to images of human faces than to neutral images. They also attended more to familiar faces than to unfamiliar ones. This is not trained behavior. It is a spontaneous preference, suggesting that human faces hold a special significance for dogs, a kind of social gravity that pulls their attention before any command is given. Dogs have more neural machinery dedicated to processing emotional sounds in the voice than other sounds. When researchers played recordings of human emotional vocalizations, including laughter, crying, and neutral speech, and compared them to dog vocalizations, they found that dogs activate similar brain regions in response to emotional sounds that humans do. They are not just registering that a sound has been made, they are reading the emotional content embedded in it. A crying child affects a dog differently than a laughing one. The dog's response is not random. It is emotionally calibrated. There is a specific protein in dogs that binds to oxytocin, the same hormone associated with bonding and attachment in humans. When a dog and a human make eye contact, both the dog and the person experience a rise in oxytocin levels. This has been measured directly. Staring into your dog's eyes, if the relationship is warm and trusting, is literally a bonding experience at the chemical level. The same hormone that floods between a parent and a newborn, the hormone that underwrites the deepest forms of mammalian attachment, moves between you and your dog when you look at each other. This is not sentiment. This is biology. The bond is real, and it is woven from the same chemistry that holds all close relationships together. Dogs can read human body language with extraordinary sensitivity. They notice when you are sad in ways that go beyond your face and your voice. A person who is hunched, who moves slowly, who sighs frequently, who avoids eye contact, will often draw a dog to approach and sit closer than usual. This behavioral response has been observed even in dogs who have had no specific training. The dog is reading the entire system of the person, the posture, the movement, the breath, the smell, all of it at once, and responding to the aggregate emotional signal. They may not understand grief in the way that humans experience it, but they respond to grief as though they do. Dogs frequently check in with their owners during a task in a way that wolves do not. If a dog is given a problem it cannot solve, such as a jar with a treat inside that it cannot open, it will typically attempt to solve the problem for a while, and then it will look at a nearby human. It will ask for help. Wolves in the same situation will continue trying to solve the problem independently. Dogs have been shaped by thousands of years of collaboration with humans to seek our input. They have evolved to treat us not just as providers, but as social partners. The glance a dog gives you when it is stuck is one of the most remarkable things in nature. It is a look that says, "I know you can help." The oldest confirmed dog burial on record dates to approximately 14,000 years ago in what is now Germany. The burial contained the remains of a dog alongside a man and a woman, suggesting that the animal was considered worthy of the same funeral rites as its human companions. This is extraordinary. It means that people were mourning dogs, marking their deaths, including them in the rituals reserved for those who mattered, at least 14,000 years ago. The dog was not simply a tool. It was a member of something, a part of whatever early humans understood as family. Dogs are sensitive to the emotional consistency between a person's voice and their face. In one study, dogs were shown videos of human faces expressing either happiness or anger, while simultaneously hearing a voice with either a happy or an angry tone. Dogs spent more time looking at the face when the vocal tone matched the facial expression. They seemed to expect emotional coherence in the humans around them. They have learned that what a face shows and what a voice says should line up, because in their experience, they usually do. When those signals conflict, it captures their attention in the way that something unusual always does. Some dogs appear to be capable of what researchers call deceptive behavior. In experiments where dogs knew that a particular human had previously prevented them from getting food, they were more likely to lead that human toward an empty box and guide a more generous human toward a box containing food. The dogs seemed to distinguish between humans who would and would not allow them to succeed, and adjusted their behavior accordingly. Whether this constitutes deception in a morally meaningful sense is debated. But the cognitive flexibility it requires, the ability to track what a specific individual knows and modify behavior based on that knowledge, is genuinely complex. Dogs can learn to associate specific words with specific objects in a way that resembles vocabulary acquisition in children. A border collie named Chaser, studied extensively by psychologist John Pilley in South Carolina, learned the names of over 1,000 objects, including toys, balls, and various household items. Chaser could retrieve a named object from a pile, even when the name referred to an object she had never seen before. She did this by a process of elimination, reasoning that the unfamiliar name must refer to the unfamiliar object. This capacity, called fast mapping, was previously thought to be specific to human children learning language. Chaser suggested that at least some dogs can do something strikingly similar. Dogs can detect changes in the magnetic field of the Earth and appear to use geomagnetic cues for navigation. Studies have found that dogs off-leash tend to prefer to align their bodies along a north-south axis when urinating or defecating, particularly when the geomagnetic field is stable. This preference disappears during periods of geomagnetic disturbance. The dog's body seems to be registering the magnetic field the way a compass registers north, and the animal appears to use this information at least partly to orient itself in space. Whether this conscious or entirely automatic is unknown, but the sensitivity itself is real and has now been documented across dozens of different breeds. Dogs that live together synchronize their behavior in ways that are not simply explained by shared routine. They tend to sleep at similar times, wake at similar times, eat more readily when another dog is eating, and show emotional responses that seem to ripple between them. Some researchers describe this as emotional contagion, the involuntary spread of emotional states between individuals, a phenomenon also observed in humans and many other social mammals. The dog is not just living with other dogs, it is, in some sense, emotionally interwoven with them. What one dog feels spreads quietly into the group like a ripple across a still surface. Dogs can distinguish between the smell of a healthy human and one who is ill. The specific mechanism involves the volatile compounds that the body produces differently when it is fighting infection or disease. Dogs trained in clinical settings have successfully identified individuals with bacterial infections, viral infections, and elevated blood sugar in diabetics at levels that allow them to alert their owner before the person has shown obvious physical symptoms. A dog that begins nudging its owner or behaving with unusual intensity before a blood sugar crash may be doing so because it genuinely smells the biochemical shift that the person's body is producing. The dog's nose is reading the body in real time. Dogs show more stress when separated from owners to whom they are closely attached. This stress is measurable physiologically. Their cortisol levels rise. Their heart rates increase. Some show repetitive behaviors, pacing and circling, that are recognized markers of anxiety. The intensity of separation distress tends to correlate with the strength of the bond between dog and owner, not simply with how long the dog has been left alone. A dog that has formed a deep attachment to one particular person shows a distinctly different response to that person's absence than to the absence of other familiar individuals. They notice exactly who is missing. Some dogs have been reported to sit beside or return to the graves of their deceased owners. The most famous case is perhaps Greyfriars Bobby, a Skye Terrier in 19th century Edinburgh, who reportedly spent 14 years visiting or guarding the grave of his owner, John Gray, who died in 1858. Whether every detail of that story is accurate is debated, but the documented behavior of dogs, maintaining proximity to grave sites or returning repeatedly to locations associated with deceased companions, animal or human, has been reported across many cultures and centuries. The dog does not have the human concept of death, but it has the dog's concept of absence, and it goes looking anyway. Dogs can tell when you are lying, at least in a limited sense. In one experiment, researchers had dogs watch a person indicate which of two containers held food. If the person had been reliable in a previous round, the dog followed their indication. If the person had misled the dog before, pointing to an empty container, the dog was less likely to follow their lead the second time. The dog is tracking reliability. It is updating its understanding of whether this particular person can be trusted as a source of accurate information. This requires something quite sophisticated, a model of the individual's behavior over time, and a willingness to revise expectations based on evidence. The shape of a dog's face, particularly the position of a small muscle above the inner brow called the levator anguli oculi medialis, is different from that of wolves. In wolves, this muscle is vestigial, small, and rarely used. In dogs, it is active and prominent. When a dog raises its inner eyebrows, it produces an expression that humans interpret as sad, worried, or appealing. Research suggests that humans respond to this expression with increased nurturing behavior. Dogs that produce this expression frequently are adopted from shelters more quickly than dogs who do not. Whether the dog is using this expression intentionally or not, the effect is real. Over thousands of years of living with humans, dogs developed a muscle in their face specifically suited to producing expressions that move us. Dogs can identify their owners by scent alone in the absence of any other cue. In a study where owners and strangers wore identical clothing and stood behind barriers that concealed them visually and acoustically, dogs still consistently moved toward the area associated with their owner's scent. The scent was enough. It was more than enough. It was, in the dog's experience, perhaps the most reliable signature of all, more stable than a face, more consistent than a voice, more personal than anything else one creature carries through the world. Dogs can recognize when a person is unfair. In one experiment, 2 dogs were both asked to perform the same task, shaking hands. One was given a treat as a reward. The other received nothing. The unrewarded dog did not simply stop performing the task. It became agitated, looked away from the experimenter, and eventually refused to continue. The response resembled what happens in humans and other primates when they perceive an unfair distribution of rewards. The dog was not just experiencing frustration. It was comparing its outcome to another dog's outcome and registering a discrepancy. Something like a sense of fairness operates in the canine mind. Some dog breeds have been selectively bred for millennia for specific cognitive traits rather than physical ones. Herding dogs like border collies have been shaped by generations of selection for attentiveness to human signals, for anticipating the next instruction, for modifying behavior in response to subtle directional cues from a distant person. The result is an animal whose relationship with human communication has been sharpened to an almost uncanny degree. A skilled border collie can respond to whistle signals, hand gestures, and voice commands from hundreds of meters away, adjusting the movement of a flock with a precision that requires it to hold a model of what the human wants and move the animals toward that goal. It is collaborative intelligence of a remarkable kind. Dogs have been used as sentinels and protectors by human communities for at least 12,000 years, and probably much longer. Archaeological sites across Europe and the Middle East contain evidence of dogs living in close association with human settlements, positioned at the edges of encampments in ways that suggest a protective role. Their hearing is sensitive enough to detect frequencies between 40 Hz and 65,000 Hz. Ours ranges from about 20 to 20,000 Hz. A dog hears things we cannot hear at distances we cannot imagine, and it has been raising the alarm across a partnership with humans that spans more time than agriculture itself. Dogs can experience something that functions very much like jealousy. In one study, dogs watched their owners interact affectionately with a realistic stuffed dog. The owners petted it, spoke to it, paid it attention. The real dogs attempted to push between their owner and the stuffed animal, whined, barked, and in some cases snapped at the fake dog. The researchers used a behavioral checklist originally designed to study jealousy in human infants. The dog's behaviors mapped cleanly onto the jealousy indicators. Whatever the dogs were feeling, it looked from the outside exactly like what jealousy looks like when infants experience it. The desire to reclaim the attention of an important attachment figure is not unique to people. Dogs can be trained to detect low blood oxygen levels in humans with respiratory conditions before the person or monitoring equipment detects the change. The mechanism is again olfactory. As blood oxygen drops, the body's chemistry shifts in ways that produce distinct scent compounds. Dogs who have learned to associate this scent with a medical event can alert their owners in time to take preventive action. A dog sleeping at the foot of a bed of someone with a chronic respiratory condition is not simply a companion. In the right circumstances, it is a monitoring device that operates continuously, without batteries, without calibration, without ever being switched off. The sound of a dog's bark carries emotional information that humans can decode with moderate accuracy, even without prior experience with dogs. When people who have never owned a dog are played recordings of barks produced in different contexts, playful, fearful, aggressive, greeting, they assign emotional labels to the barks at levels above chance. Something about the acoustic properties of a bark, its pitch, its duration, its rhythm, encodes information that human auditory systems can partially interpret. Dogs have been living alongside us long enough that our two species have developed a kind of shared acoustic vocabulary, at least in outline, without anyone designing it. Dogs often mirror the behavior of their owners in ways that go beyond simple training. Owners who are physically active tend to have more active dogs, not simply because the dogs are walked more, but because the dogs pick up on the energy and behavioral patterns of the household. Owners who are calm and low-key tend to have calmer dogs. Owners who are anxious often have dogs who exhibit elevated stress behaviors. This is not a perfect relationship, and breed tendencies play a significant role. But there is a genuine mirroring effect in long-term human-dog pairs, a kind of behavioral synchrony that develops through years of shared life. Dogs who have lived for a long time with a particular person begin to anticipate that person's daily rhythms with a precision that goes beyond simple conditioning. They know, without a clock, approximately when meals come, when walks happen, when the person usually wakes. Some of this is certainly tied to environmental cues, light levels, external sounds, the smell of coffee brewing. But dogs also seem to track elapsed time through an internal biological process. Studies have found that the amount of time a person has been away correlates with how enthusiastically a dog greets them on return, suggesting that the dog has some representation of duration. The longer you were gone, the more they missed you. Dogs are capable of expressing what researchers call primary emotions. Fear, anger, joy, and disgust have all been identified in dogs through behavioral and physiological markers. What remains more contested is whether dogs experience secondary or social emotions, things like guilt, pride, embarrassment, and shame. The famous guilty look that dog owners describe so frequently is, according to most research, more likely a response to the owner's body language and tone of voice than to an internal recognition of wrongdoing. A dog that looks guilty may simply be responding to your displeasure, but the fact that it responds to your displeasure so specifically, adjusting its posture, its gaze, its ear position, its tail, all at once, suggests an extremely fine-tuned social sensitivity, even if the underlying feeling is not guilt in the human sense. Dogs in long-term relationships with their owners show measurably lower cortisol levels when the owner is present than when the owner is absent, and they show a spike in cortisol when the owner shows signs of distress. The dog is not just calmed by your presence. It is stressed by your stress. It is attuned to your emotional state in a way that makes its own internal chemistry responsive to yours. This is a form of empathy at the physiological level, whatever we choose to call it, at the psychological level. The dog's body responds to what your body is going through. Some dogs have been observed providing comfort to humans who are crying or in visible distress without any prior training to do so. They approach, they lean in, they place their head on the person's lap, they stay close. studies in which strangers, as well as owners, were asked to pretend to cry in front of dogs, found that dogs in both conditions were more likely to approach and engage in comforting behavior than when the person was simply humming or quietly reading. The dog is not following a learned rule. Something in it is drawn toward a distressed person, toward that specific set of signals, and it responds accordingly. It shows up. Dogs have a remarkable ability to track the trajectory of a thrown object and position themselves to intercept it, performing in real time the kind of physics calculation that requires significant processing of motion, arc, and speed. This is more impressive than it sounds. Many animals struggle to extrapolate the path of a moving object beyond what they can currently see. Dogs do it fluidly, constantly, as if the math is simply obvious to them. Play, in this sense, is not trivial. It is one of the arenas where the dog's cognitive abilities become most visible, a space where intelligence and joy meet. Dogs process familiar smells in a region of the brain associated with positive memories and reward. When a dog smells the scent of its owner, there is measurable activation in the caudate nucleus, a brain region associated with anticipation of positive things. The smell of you, to your dog, is not just a neutral identification signal. It is emotionally colored. It activates the same reward circuitry that activates in humans when they encounter something they love. Your scent, to your dog, is something like the smell of something wonderful about to happen. Dogs show evidence of having a sense of humor, or at least a capacity for playful communication. They produce a forced, breathy exhalation during play that is acoustically distinct from other vocalizations and has been called a play pant. When recordings of this sound are played to dogs in shelters, the dogs show relaxation responses and increased play behavior. Some researchers interpret this as a form of laughter, or at least a socially communicative signal whose function parallels laughter's function in humans. Whether it feels like joy to the dog is impossible to say with certainty, but the signal exists. It is specific to play, and it makes other dogs want to play in response. In a study where dogs were asked to solve a task by watching either a human or another dog demonstrate the solution, dogs were more likely to copy the human demonstrator successfully when the task involved cooperation, and more likely to copy the dog demonstrator when the task involved independent problem solving. This suggests that dogs have a nuanced model of who is likely to be the better teacher for a given kind of challenge. They are not simply copying whoever is present. They are making a judgment, however implicit, about whose approach is most relevant to the problem at hand. Dogs have been shown to follow gaze, not just pointing. If a human looks at an object, a dog will often look at that object too. More interestingly, if the human first makes eye contact with the dog and then looks at an object, the dog is more likely to follow the gaze than if the human simply looks at the object without first establishing eye contact. The dog is waiting for the communicative signal. It has learned that eye contact is the preamble, the way you begin a communication, the look that says, "Pay attention to what I do next." Dogs who are exposed to music show behavioral and physiological responses that vary with the type of music being played. Reggae and soft rock have been found to produce the most calming effects, including reduced heart rate, lower cortisol levels, and more time spent lying down. Heavy metal and fast-paced pop tend to produce more agitation. Classical music occupies a middle ground. The dog is not interpreting the music the way a human does, but it is responding to its acoustic properties, its tempo, its tonal qualities in ways that produce measurable differences in its state. Sound matters to dogs in ways that extend well beyond the information it carries. Dogs can learn to recognize their own image in a mirror as containing information, though whether they recognize it as themselves is less clear. Most dogs initially approach a mirror as though it contains another dog, and then lose interest once they determine that the image presents no social information, that there is no smell, no breath, no real presence. But some dogs have been shown to use mirrors as tools, looking into a mirror to locate an object that they cannot see directly. The mirror becomes a source of visual information about the space behind them. That is a form of understanding what a mirror is and does, even if it differs from the self-recognition that chimpanzees and elephants demonstrate. The dog's eye has a reflective layer behind the retina called the tapetum lucidum that amplifies available light. This is why a dog's eyes catch the light in the dark and glow back at you. It also means dogs can see in much lower light conditions than humans can. They sacrifice some visual acuity for this enhanced sensitivity, and they perceive the world in a narrower color spectrum than we do, essentially a version of red-green color blindness. Their visual world is in many ways less detailed and less colorful than ours, but it is richer in other dimensions, in movement, in low-light information, in the peripheral vision needed to track fast-moving prey. Dogs have hearts that respond differently to their owner's voice than to strangers' voices. When a dog hears its owner's voice, heart rate variability, a measure of cardiovascular flexibility and calm, changes in ways associated with positive states. The owner's voice does something to the dog's nervous system that a stranger's voice does not. This is partly why dogs respond to their owner's voice across a phone or a recording in ways they do not respond to random human voices. The voice itself, even stripped of the person, carries enough of the familiar signature to produce a calming response in the animal. Dogs demonstrate what psychologists call secure base behavior. In environments that contain both their owner and unfamiliar stimuli, dogs use their owner as a reference point. They explore more freely when the owner is present, return to the owner when uncertain, and show higher stress when the owner is absent. This is structurally identical to the secure base behavior that human infants show with their primary caregivers. The infant explores the room, comes back to check in, explores again, comes back again. The owner is not just a food provider or a physical anchor. The owner is, in the dog's emotional system, a source of safety, a foundation from which the world can be safely approached. Dogs that are exposed to consistent and responsive caregiving from a young age develop more stable and confident behavior patterns than dogs who experience inconsistent or neglectful care. This mirrors findings in human developmental psychology regarding attachment. The quality of early relationships shapes the nervous system in ways that persist into adulthood. A dog that learned in its first months that distress would bring comfort, that needs would be met, that the world was responsive, carries that learning forward. A dog that learned the opposite carries that forward too. The nervous system remembers how it was held. Dogs in pairs show heart rate synchronization during rest that resembles the kind of physiological entrainment seen in closely bonded humans. When two dogs who live together and are strongly bonded lie near each other, their heart rates tend to drift toward alignment over time. This is not simply a response to the same external events. It is something more fundamental, a kind of biological attunement that develops in close social relationships. The dog that sleeps beside you is not just occupying space near you. It is in some physical sense coming into alignment with you. Dogs have a vestigial hunting drive that expresses itself differently depending on breed and individual temperament, but the drive itself is nearly universal. When a dog chases a ball or a leaf or a piece of fabric on a lasso, it is engaging a sequence of predatory behaviors that has been partially preserved across domestication, a simplified echo of pursuit, capture, and satiation. The satisfaction a dog shows after catching and shaking a toy is not performance. It is the completion of an ancient circuit, a small biological fulfillment of something deeply written into the animal's nervous system. Play gives dogs access to something they are built to need. Dogs show a preference for certain kinds of human touch, depending on the relationship. With familiar people, dogs tolerate and often seek out contact on the head, the back, the chest. With strangers, they are more comfortable being touched on the lower body, the side, the chest when approached slowly. Some dogs never fully tolerate touch from unfamiliar people, regardless of the context. This is not simply about training or early socialization, though both matter. It is about trust, about who has earned access to the dog's body through a history of safe contact. The dog knows the difference between a hand it has reason to trust and one it does not. Dogs have been shown to perform worse on cognitive tasks when their owners appear anxious or distracted, and better when their owners are calm and focused. The owner's emotional state seems to function as a kind of environmental variable for the dog. A calm owner creates a calmer internal state in the dog, which in turn supports more effective problem solving. An anxious owner creates an anxious dog, which is more easily derailed by novelty or uncertainty. This means that the quality of your internal state matters not just for you, but for the animal that shares your life. You are not just its caretaker. You are part of its psychological environment. Some dogs have shown the ability to alert to impending seizures in humans before any external signs of the seizure are visible. The mechanism is not yet fully understood. Some researchers believe it involves subtle changes in the person's behavior or scent that the dog has learned to associate with a seizure event. Others believe the dog may detect very early physiological changes, micro-expressions, slight variations in body odor, or subtle motor behaviors that precede the seizure by minutes. Whatever the mechanism, the ability is real, and the dogs who have it often develop it spontaneously, without specific training, simply through proximity and attention. Dogs have a kind of selective memory that prioritizes emotionally significant events. They remember things that were associated with strong feelings, positive or negative, more robustly than neutral events. A single frightening encounter with a particular kind of sound or animal or object can shape a dog's response to that stimulus for years. A single profoundly positive experience, a particularly joyful play session, an especially warm and comforting moment can also leave a lasting impression. The dog's memory, like human memory, is not a neutral recorder. It is shaped by feeling. Dogs exposed to a broad range of experiences, people, animals, surfaces, sounds, and environments during the critical socialization window between roughly 3 and 12 weeks of age tend to develop more flexible and resilient adult temperaments. The nervous system of a young dog is, during this period, in a state of heightened sensitivity and plasticity. What it encounters becomes part of its reference library for what the world is. If the world it encounters during this window is rich and varied and safe, the dog carries forward a model of the world as something it can navigate. If the world during that window is narrow or frightening, the dog carries that forward too. Early experience is not destiny, but it is powerful. Dogs can experience chronic stress in ways that cause lasting changes in the nervous system, including elevated baseline cortisol, heightened startle responses, and reduced capacity for social engagement. These changes are not permanent, but they are not trivially reversed. A dog that has lived in a stressful or unpredictable environment may carry the physiological marks of that experience for months or years. This is why rescue dogs often need time to settle, not because they are difficult, but because their nervous systems have been shaped by uncertainty, and certainty must be rebuilt through accumulated experience, one safe day at a time. Dogs who receive consistent, calm, and responsive handling from humans show more robust immune function than dogs who are chronically stressed. The relationship between psychological state and immune function in dogs mirrors what has been observed in humans. Social support, predictability, and a sense of safety are not simply pleasant features of a life. They are biologically supportive conditions that shape how the body defends itself. Your relationship with your dog is good for it in ways that extend into its very blood. The bond between a dog and its primary human does not simply reflect conditioning. It reflects something that functions like attachment in the clinical sense, the kind of deep psychological bond that humans form with caregivers and close partners. Evidence for this comes from the fact that dogs show a preference for their owner, even in situations where the owner is not providing food or play, where the reward is simply presence. The dog wants to be near you, even when you are doing nothing for it. Presence itself is the reward. That is what attachment looks like when you strip away all the other variables. Dogs have a sense of individual identity strong enough that they can recognize specific individuals among a group based on scent alone. And they can do this even when the individuals are genetically very similar, such as identical twins. In studies, dogs trained to identify a specific person's scent will consistently identify that person, even when presented with a twin's scent, despite the twins being genetically identical. The dog is not detecting genetic signature so much as the specific chemical composition of a given body's current metabolic state, the unique olfactory fingerprint produced by that individual's diet, health, microbiome, and other biological variables. No two people smell the same to a dog. The relationship between dogs and human agricultural societies appears to have produced selection pressure for a specific set of traits in dogs, traits related to tolerance of human presence, responsiveness to human signals, and an ability to subsist on a diet richer in carbohydrates than a wolf could manage. Dogs who lived near human settlements needed to eat what humans ate or discarded, and over generations, Dogs who could digest starch more efficiently were at an advantage. The domestic dog's genome contains more copies of the gene that produces amylase, the enzyme that breaks down starch, than the wolf genome does. They evolved to share our table. Dogs show elevated arousal and attention when they hear the name of a person they are attached to, even in the absence of that person. Simply saying the owner's name in the dog's presence produces measurable changes in the dog's behavior and physiology. The name does not just refer to a category of individual. It refers to a specific person who matters to the dog in a specific way. The word and the person are linked in the dog's mind through a long history of association, and the word alone can trigger the anticipatory state associated with that person's presence. Dogs can identify the emotional valence of a voice they have never heard before, categorizing it as positive or negative at levels above chance. This suggests that they have a generalized capacity for reading emotional tone in human voices that extends beyond individual familiarity. They have developed a kind of cross-individual sensitivity to the emotional markers in human speech, the rise and fall of pitch, the tempo of syllables, the quality of the breath behind the words. They are listening for how you feel, not just for what you are saying. Some dogs have demonstrated the ability to recognize photographs of their owners on a tablet screen and will tap the photograph of their owner rather than photographs of strangers when asked to find a specific person. This requires the dog to translate the three-dimensional, olfactory-rich representation of a known person into a flat, visually encoded image and still maintain the recognition. It requires a kind of cross-modal representation of the person, an understanding that the flat image on a screen corresponds to the living, smelling, breathing individual they know. That is a form of abstraction that is not trivial. Dogs experience a state resembling boredom. When understimulated for extended periods, they show increased restlessness, increased seeking behavior, increased tendency toward destructive activity, and decreased interest in resting. The nervous system of an intelligent social animal requires input. It requires novelty, social contact, physical activity, and cognitive challenge. A dog who is not receiving these things is not simply inactive. It is in a state that produces distress. The destruction of furniture, the endless barking, the pacing are not bad behavior in the moralistic sense. They are the expressions of a need that is not being met. Dogs have an internal representation of the physical world that allows them to navigate familiar environments even in complete darkness. This representation is built partly from visual memory and partly from olfactory and tactile information. A dog can move through a known house in the dark without bumping into things it knows are there, not because it is seeing them, but because it has built a model of the space that it carries internally. The world is represented inside the dog's mind in a form that persists beyond the moment of perception. Some dog breeds have been selectively bred for a reduced tendency toward fear responses, which has made them extraordinarily useful in contexts requiring calm under pressure, including search and rescue, bomb detection, and medical assistance. The fearlessness of a well-bred working dog in a loud or chaotic environment is not indifference. It is a calibrated nervous system response shaped by decades of selective pressure for equanimity. These dogs can work in rubble, in hospitals, in airports, alongside machinery and crowds and the smell of fear, without being destabilized. The breeding has shaped not just the body, but the quality of the mind inside it. Dogs who regularly engage in learning new behaviors remain cognitively sharper into old age than dogs who do not receive this kind of stimulation. This mirrors findings in human cognitive aging. Mental engagement, the challenge of learning something new, protects the brain from some of the effects of time. A dog that is still being taught new things, still being asked to problem solve, still being engaged as a thinking participant in the household, tends to age better than one who is not. The brain, in dogs as in humans, is helped by being used. Dogs can experience something that functions like grief when a companion, human or animal, dies or disappears. Changes in behavior following the loss of a companion are well documented. Reduced appetite, decreased activity, altered sleep patterns, increased vocalizations, loss of interest in play. These changes are temporary in most cases, resolving over weeks or months. But they are real. Something in the dog is registering an absence, and the absence matters. Not in the philosophical way that human grief has layers of meaning, but in the immediate, physiological, social sense that something that was here is gone, and the world is different because of it. Dogs have played a role in human health that extends far beyond their function as companions. They have been used as co-therapists in hospitals and psychiatric facilities, where their presence alone produces measurable reductions in patients' anxiety, blood pressure, and pain perception. They have worked in schools with children who have learning differences. They have sat with veterans during the long and difficult work of trauma processing. They have accompanied the elderly through the particular loneliness of late life. The dog does not know it is doing therapy, but it is doing something reliable, repeatable, and genuinely helpful that no medication replicates. Dogs who spend time with a person who is grieving tend to modify their behavior in ways that parallel what a socially sensitive human companion might do. They become quieter. They initiate contact more gently. They stay closer than usual without demanding anything. They do not try to fix the grief. They simply remain near it. There is something in the dog that knows, at least in a functional sense, that this is not the moment for play or noise. This is a moment for presence, and the dog provides it. The relationship between dogs and children has been shown to produce specific developmental benefits, including reduced anxiety, improved social behavior, and higher levels of empathy. Children who grow up with dogs practice reading nonverbal cues constantly, learning to interpret a social other who cannot use words, who communicates entirely through body, behavior, and sound. This is a form of social training that turns out to be broadly useful. Learning to read a dog may help children become better at reading people. Dogs can tell from your smell when you have been in contact with another dog. They will investigate you differently upon your return than they would if you had simply been out. They may smell your hands and clothing with particular attention, tracking information about who you were with, what kind of animal it was, whether it was healthy, whether it was fearful or confident. Your clothes are a record, and your dog reads it. Dogs exposed to a calm and consistent human presence during stressful events, such as a thunderstorm or fireworks, show significantly lower physiological stress responses than dogs left alone during the same events. The presence of a trusted person is not just comforting in an abstract sense. It is actively regulating the human body, its smell, its warmth, its calm breathing, functions as a kind of biological anchor for the dog's own nervous system. You bring the dog's physiology back toward calm simply by being there. There is evidence that dogs have a rudimentary concept of fairness that extends to humans. In studies where dogs received treats for performing tasks, but watched human experimenters receive much larger or more appealing rewards for the same tasks, the dogs showed behavioral signs of dissatisfaction. They were less willing to continue the task. They disengaged. Whatever the internal experience, the behavioral output resembles what happens in humans and other primates when the distribution of outcomes seems inequitable. Dogs notice when the deal is not fair. Dogs have been trained to detect the presence of insects, including bedbugs, termites, and the Asian longhorned beetle, with accuracy rates that exceed those of conventional pest detection methods. The olfactory sensitivity that allows them to detect illness can be turned toward any problem that has a scent signature. Dogs are now used in conservation work to detect the scat of endangered species, in law enforcement to detect electronic devices, in customs to detect prohibited agricultural products. The nose that evolved to track prey across open ground has become one of the most flexible detection instruments humanity has ever had. When dogs play with each other, they take turns. They engage in role reversal, switching between who is chasing and who is being chased, between who is wrestling on top and who is on the bottom. This role reversal is one of the indicators that play in social animals serves a social bonding function beyond simple exercise. When a larger, more dominant dog voluntarily plays a submissive role with a smaller dog, it is doing something that goes beyond self-interest. It is doing something that maintains the relationship, that signals investment in continued social connection. Fair play is a way of saying, I want to keep doing this with you. Dogs who have lived with people for many years develop a nuanced reading of the specific individual they are living with. They know when your mood is different, even when nothing obvious has changed. They know from the way you walk whether something is wrong. They learn the particular texture of your emotional life the way any attentive companion does over time. They develop a model of you, not a static one, but a dynamic one that they continue to update throughout their lives. They know you in the way that only someone who has been paying close attention for a long time can know you. Dogs have been studied as models for the neuroscience of social bonding, precisely because their bonding mechanisms overlap so substantially with those of humans. The oxytocin system, the dopaminergic reward system, the stress response system, all function in dogs in ways that are informative about how they function in us. We have learned things about human attachment partly by studying dogs. The relationship is not one-sided, even in science. The dog teaches us about ourselves. Dogs can distinguish between the smell of their own body and the smell of another dog's body. This was demonstrated through experiments using a dog's own scent mixed with another dog's scent, compared to another dog's scent alone. Dogs spent more time investigating containers with their own scent mixed in, suggesting that they recognized the scent as including a familiar element. Whether this constitutes self-recognition in a philosophically meaningful sense is debated, but something in the dog identifies its own chemical signature as distinct from others. The dog knows it smells like itself. Dogs communicate with humans using a combination of signals that appear to have been shaped specifically for interspecies communication. The sounds they produce when living with humans are more varied and more context-specific than the vocalizations observed in feral dogs or wolves. Some researchers believe that bark differentiation, the range of barks that carry different information, grew more complex through generations of living with humans who responded differentially to different sounds. The dog learned that sound could communicate to humans, and the repertoire of meaningful sounds expanded in response. Communication shaped the communicator. Dogs age differently depending on their size, with smaller breeds tending to live longer than larger ones. A toy poodle may live 15 years or more. A Great Dane may live only 8 to 10. The reason is not fully understood. One hypothesis is that larger dogs age faster at the cellular level. Another suggests that the growth processes that produce large body size may also accelerate aging in related biological systems. Whatever the mechanism, size and lifespan are inversely correlated in dogs in a way that has no direct parallel in human biology. Dogs show a marked difference in behavior depending on whether they are being observed by a person or are alone. When unobserved, dogs are significantly more likely to approach forbidden food, to engage in behaviors they have been discouraged from, to investigate restricted areas. They know when they are being watched. This is not guilt or moral reasoning, but it is sensitivity to observation, a tracking of whether a social partner is present and attending, which is the foundation on which more complex social cognition is built. Dogs who live in the same household tend to develop a shared set of behavioral expectations and a shared social structure that stabilizes over time. They negotiate relationships through repeated interactions, establishing who defers to whom in specific contexts, who gets access to particular resources, who initiates play, and who follows. This social hierarchy is not rigid or uniformly enforced. It is fluid, contextual, and maintained through ongoing communication. Domestic dogs have taken the flexible social structure of their wolf ancestors and adapted it to the particular complexity of household life. Dogs have a brain-to-body ratio similar to that of cats and slightly below that of humans, but brain size alone is a poor predictor of cognitive ability. What matters more is the organization of specific brain regions, the connectivity between them, and the particular demands that shaped their development. Dogs have unusually developed regions related to social processing and olfactory analysis. Their intelligence is not general intelligence in the human sense. It is intelligence that has been tuned over tens of thousands of years for the specific cognitive demands of living in close collaboration with people. The resting heart rate of a dog is between 60 and 140 beats per minute, depending on size and breed, significantly faster than the human resting range of 60 to 100. When a dog rests with a human, its heart rate often slows toward the lower end of its range. Physical proximity to a trusted human is literally calming at the cardiovascular level. The dog's heart quiets in your presence. That is not metaphor. It is physiology. Dogs show behaviors consistent with an understanding of object permanence, the ability to represent an object that is no longer visible. If you show a dog a treat and then hide it under one of 3 cups, the dog will go directly to the correct cup, even after a brief delay. The object has not disappeared from the dog's mind simply because it is no longer visible. It maintains a representation of the hidden object and uses that representation to guide its behavior. This kind of mental representation is a building block of higher cognition. Some dogs have been documented following complex routes through urban environments to reach specific destinations without human guidance, navigating traffic, intersections, and changing environments. Stories of dogs finding their way home from distant locations, sometimes over multiple days and considerable distances, suggest a navigational capacity that integrates spatial memory, geomagnetic cues, and possibly solar orientation. The dog carries a map inside it. Not a verbal or visual one in the human sense, but a rich spatial and sensory representation of where things are relative to where it is. Dogs that have been with a person during the person's experience of a traumatic event sometimes show persistent vigilance and attentiveness to that person afterward, as though the dog has registered that something dangerous can happen and has taken on a kind of protective monitoring role. This behavior has been documented in the dogs of veterans returning from conflict, in the dogs of people who have been in accidents or medical emergencies. The dog does not understand trauma in the way the person does, but it has noticed something and it stays closer. Dogs have been the subject of more scientific study in the area of interspecies communication than perhaps any other animal. Research groups across Hungary, Germany, the United States, Japan, and the United Kingdom have contributed decades of carefully designed experiments aimed at understanding precisely what dogs know, what they feel, and how they have been shaped by their relationship with humans. What those studies collectively reveal is that the domestic dog is one of the most sophisticated social cognizers in the animal kingdom, calibrated specifically for life with people. Not because it is the most intelligent animal, but because it is the most specifically attuned to us. And now, at the close of this journey, something worth holding on to. The ancient Roman writer, Pliny the Elder, recorded in his natural history stories of dogs who mourned their owners so faithfully that they refused food and died beside them. Alexander the Great built a city and named it Peritas, after his beloved dog. The explorer Meriwether Lewis brought his Newfoundland, Seaman, on the entire journey of the core of discovery, across a continent, through conditions that tested every member of the expedition. In nearly every human culture, in nearly every era we have evidence for, the dog appears at the side of the person, not because it was required to be there, but because something in the long history between us made that the natural place to be. The dog does not know it is remarkable. It does not know it can detect cancer, or sense earthquakes, or follow magnetic fields, or decode the emotional content of a face it has never seen. It does not know it helped shape human civilization, that it stood watch over our earliest settlements, that it ran beside our earliest hunts. It simply does what it has always done. It pays attention to the person nearby. It waits for the signals. It responds to what it finds. It stays close. That is perhaps the deepest thing science has confirmed about dogs. Not any single cognitive feat, not the nose, not the oxytocin loop, not the gaze following, or the play panting, or the ability to read the emotional content of a voice. The deepest thing is simpler. After all that study, after all those careful experiments, after all those measurements of cortisol and heart rate and brain activation, the thing that emerges most clearly is this: the dog is genuinely attached to you, not conditionally, not because of the food, not because it has no other options, because in the long, quiet, unplanned experiment of domestication, something between dogs and people became real, something that neither species chose, but both became shaped by. A bond built slowly over millennia that turns out to be one of the most durable things we know. So if you are lucky enough to have a dog somewhere in your home tonight, asleep in its particular place, dreaming its particular dreams, twitching its paws through whatever adventure its sleeping mind is running, know that it is not simply an animal that lives with you. It is the inheritor of an ancient collaboration. It is proof that two very different kinds of minds, shaped by very different evolutionary pressures, can find each other across the silence and learn to understand. If these quiet explorations have helped you rest tonight, or if they have left something small and warm in your thoughts as you drift off, I would be so grateful if you gave this video a gentle like and subscribed to the channel. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. Until next time, sleep well, dream freely, and know that somewhere nearby, something is keeping quiet watch. Good night.